Welcome, bienvenidos, benvindu to the Soccermetrics Copa Libertadores show, a production of Soccermetrics and Soccer Down Here, the only English language podcast devoted to South America's premier club competition. I'm your host, Howard Hamilton, the founder of Soccermetrics. It's decision week in the group stage of the 2024 Copa Libertadores. At the end of this week, everything will be decided. We'll know the 16 teams in the knockout stage of the Libertadores, the 8 teams that will appear in the knockout round playoff of the Copa Sudamericana, and the 8 teams that will say goodbye to continental competition. In this episode, I'll go through the matches that will be played this week. But first, let's start with news from the Libertadores. And we start with news item number 1. Rosario Central fans allowed to travel. There was considerable discussion in the Argentine and Uruguayan press as to whether Peñarol would allow Rosario Central fans to travel. This has been a topic of previous news items in previous episodes. The news came last week that Peñarol, in the end, will give 2,000 tickets to Rosario Central fans. You could tell by the communication that they released that they really did not want to do this, but they were forced to do so by CONMEBOL. CONMEBOL's regulations state that each club needs to make a minimum of 2,000 tickets available to away fans or pay a fine. In previous news item of the previous episode, I expected that Peñarol would be more willing to pay the fine rather than give tickets to away fans, but they decide otherwise. Nevertheless, this match will be designated as a high-risk match by the Uruguayan government. Peñarol sent out the following message to their supporters, and the content of that message said, quote, "Let's take care of our house." In other words, avoid all manner of excess before, during, and after a match. And it went on to say that, quote, "Taking care of our house is taking care of our beloved Peñarol." Rosario Central, for their part, is publishing material for their fans, informing them of the proper procedures for traveling to Montevideo and to Peñarol's Estadio Campeón del Siglo. Those instructions include what to bring, what not to bring, where to meet, and what time to meet so that they don't miss the match. It's going to be a fiery encounter later on this week when Rosario Central face Peñarol in that winner-take-all match. News item number 2, ID scandal at Independiente del Valle. There's an emerging scandal in Ecuador, reported on May 24 on Argentina's TIC Sports site, involving the striker Alexander Bolaños of Independiente del Valle. Bolaños has been suspended provisionally by Ecuador's Football Federation after being charged with falsifying identity documents. Specifically, the substance of the charge is that Bolaños not only has a different birth date, supposedly he's actually older, but also a different name. Bolaños appeared in IDV's 3 away matches in the group stage, always as a substitute. And he's out of the lineup for the final group stage match this week, supposedly not to compromise the Ecuadorian club in case an eventual ruling goes against them. So what could happen to Bolaños and to Independiente del Valle? First of all, the Disciplinary Commission of Ecuador's Football Federation will hear the case. Next, CONMEBOL will weigh in, and they can choose to either suspend the player, fine the club, or take away points. Given precedent, the latter 2 options are unlikely, but that all depends on what IDV knew and when did they know it. News item number 3. Chelsea signed Estevão. Chelsea are about to make official the signing of Estevão from Palmeiras for 45 million euros. Estevão, who's played as a winger, is 17 years old. He has made a total of 16 starts and has scored 3 goals uh, in competitions for Palmeiras. In this season's Copa Libertadores, he has appeared 3 times and scored 1 goal in the group stage. In fact, he is one of 7 players under the age of 20 who have scored at least 1 goal. Now, the finances of the deal are that 70% of that 45 million euro fee will go to Palmeiras and 30% will go to the player. Furthermore, Esteval is not expected to join Chelsea until July 2025 when he turns 18. Palmeiras will want to keep him for the FIFA Club World Cup, in which they will appear next year in the USA. Part of the agreement that Esteval and his team have made with Chelsea is that the player will compete for first team immediately. In other words, he's not going to go out on loan to another club in the Chelsea system, in the Chelsea farm system that they've created, but rather he will compete for a first team place immediately. I think it's still going to be challenging for him because he will have competition from fellow South American players. You'll remember that Chelsea have signed Ray Paez from IDV. Paez will join the team next year in July of 2025. And they both play forward-facing positions. So it'll be interesting to see which of those players, and potentially both, end up playing for the first team of Chelsea in the 2025-26 season. This wraps up part 1 of the Soccermetrics Copa Libertadores show. In part 2, a preview of match day 6 of the group stage. Part 2 of the Soccermetrics Copa Libertadores show, a production of Soccermetrics and Soccer Down Here. I'll preview the 16 matches that make up match day 6 of the group stage. One thing to keep in mind is that in each group, both matches will be played simultaneously. And I'll present the permutations for each group as well. I'll start with Group A. Group A has been a very tight group. Over the 10 matches that have been played in the group so far, 5 of them have ended in draws. 4 of them have involved Alianza Lima, who play at Fluminense. This is a match that Alianza have to win. Both teams are very evenly matched in terms of the expected goal statistics. Alianza are more vulnerable from set-piece opportunities. But this is a match that Alianza really has to come out and play and attempt to win to have any chance of advancing the competition. And I see that as a task that is really going to be well beyond them. The other match is one of the featured matches of the week. Cerro Porteño will host Chile's Colo-Colo. You cannot get any closer than these two teams in the group. Both teams are tied on all of the tie-breaking criteria, and Cerro Porteño are ahead of Colo-Colo solely on the basis of their CONMEBOL ranking before the tournament. Now, because of that, a goalless draw qualifies Cerro Porteño because of that CONMEBOL ranking. But any score draw qualifies Colo-Colo on the away goals tiebreaker. But if the match involving Cerro Porteño y Colo-Colo ends in a draw, an Alianza Lima win will qualify Alianza Lima. This is going to be a complicated match for both teams because there are a number of suspended players. Cristian Javier Baez is suspended for Cerro Porteño because of a red card that he received, while WM Pizarro and, more critically, Arturo Vidal have been suspended because of red cards that they received in Colo-Colo's previous match. Arturo Vidal is probably the most critical piece for Cacique to lose. He has been their most important player in the group stage. From a creative standpoint, he leads the team in expected assists. He is among the leaders in expected goals, and he is the spark plug of this team. I think it's going to be very difficult for Colo-Colo to get the result that they need in Paraguay, but it's going to be a fascinating match to watch. Now turning to Group B, where the positions have basically been set. We know who the top two teams are going to be, and we know who the bottom two teams will be. The only matter is who will finish first, second, third, and fourth. Sao Paulo and Talleres de Cordoba meet in Brazil in a match that will decide who wins the group. Talleres have been one of the stronger teams in the group stage. They have really great players, Ruben Sosa, Ruben Bota. They will win the group if they achieve a draw in Brazil. Sao Paulo, the tricolor, will win the group with a win. It was an exciting match in Cordoba, and it promises to be just as exciting in Sao Paulo this week. Barcelona will host Cobresal in Guayaquil in a match that will be a play-in for the Copa Sudamericana. Barcelona will gain third if they win or draw versus Cobresal. Cobresal have to win. And I think this is going to be a really challenging match for Cobresal, who have been one of the weaker teams in the group stage. Group C is still up in the air because of the environmental catastrophe in Rio Grande do Sul. Nevertheless, the matches this week will be played at the same time. Grêmio will host Bolivia's The Strongest in a match that is a must-win match for Grêmio. Remember, they haven't played in a month because of the flooding catastrophe in Porto Alegre. In fact, this match is going to be played in Curitiba, which is about 500 kilometers to the north of Porto Alegre. It's also worth mentioning that Grêmio have really struggled for goals in this stage of the competition. I mentioned at the onset of the group stage that it would be a challenge for Grêmio with the loss of Luis Suarez. And it's proven to be just that. But they did gain a very valuable win against Huachipato the last time they played. The Strongest, we know, will finish either first or second. So a win for Strongest guarantees the group, guarantees top place in the group for them. If Grêmio lose, they're not out of it yet, but they will play Estudiantes and Huachipato next week, and they will need to win both matches to have any chance of advancing in the competition. The other match sees Estudiantes de La Plata host Huachipato. Both teams have exhibited some level of promise at different stages of this group, but they have run into difficulties. Huachipato's 4-0 loss to the Grêmio, I'm sure, really disrupted their confidence. Actually, their 4-0 loss to the Strongest really damaged their confidence, and it came at the worst time. And they also suffered a red card during that match. Gonzalo Montes will not play in the match against Estudiantes. For El Pincha, this is a must-win match for them. They're currently on 4 points with 4 matches played. They still have that additional match to play. If they drop additional points against the Steelers, they'll have to go to Brazil and get a win up there. In Group D, the top 2 and the bottom 2 are settled. The first match will see Liga de Quito host Universitario. This has been a group stage campaign that has been extremely disappointing for Liga. They are winless in their last 3. The Cremas are winless in their last 4, but they won their first match in the group stage. So they'll advance to the knockout stage with a draw, while Liga need a win. Unfortunately, Liga have only scored once in the competition and once at home over the group stage. So it's going to be a tight encounter. It could end in yet another draw for these teams. Um, I do see it's possible that Liga can win, but I think it's going to be a lot of work for them. The other match, which is another one of these featured matches this week, sees Junior de Barranquilla host Botafogo. This is seen as an even matchup. Junior are currently unbeaten in the group stage, and they only need a draw to win the group. Botafogo have been one of the hotter teams in the group stage of Libertadores. They have 3 consecutive wins. So it's going to be a very even encounter. The winner will win the group. Junior have the inside track on it with their home record. Group B is the group with the craziest set of scenarios. Some of those scenarios are fanciful. I think what is more likely is that the teams that are currently in the top 2 will stay in the top 2 at the end of the week. One match sees Flamengo host Millonarios. Millonarios are out of it. They're really playing out the string. They're out of contention for Sudamericana. Flamengo had that huge 4-0 win against Bolivar, and they can still win the group on the basis of that result. All they need is to beat Millonarios and hope for a Bolivar loss. Bolivar are playing at home against Chile's Palestina. All Bolivar need is a draw to win the group, while Palestino need the combination of not only a big win in La Paz, where, in case you don't remember, La Paz is at over 4,000 meters, and a Flamengo draw or loss. And it's also worth mentioning that Bolivar are unbeaten in the group stage. They're not just unbeaten; they haven't dropped points at home in the group stage. So what is most likely is that Bolivar will get, at minimum, the draw that they need in order to win the group. And Flamengo will almost certainly, or I wouldn't say almost certainly, but they're highly favored to get the win that they need to advance in the group as well. Group F sees Palmeiras host San Lorenzo and Independiente del Valle host Liverpool de Montevideo. Palmeiras are locked into first place in the group, and they're a team that I believe are a genuine cup contender and are playing like a cup contender. San Lorenzo have had their struggles in the group stage, but 2 consecutive wins have turned their campaign around. They need a point to advance out of the group. Can they get it? I think it's possible, but a loss opens the door to IDV. IDV have been disappointing. I think they're a team that always shows promise in Libertadores. They're a team that is essentially South America's version of Sevilla. They have been successful in Copa Sudamericana. They've won the competition twice, which gave them entry into Copa Libertadores. They're a team that shows promise of being a contender for the latter stages of the competition, but for one reason or another, they fall short. In this campaign, the home loss to Palmeiras, that last second goal, was absolutely crippling to their prospects. And that led to 2 further losses, one to San Lorenzo and another one to Palmeiras. Now they play Liverpool de Montevideo at home. A Liverpool side that has been limited. Luciano Rodriguez has scored 2 goals in the competition, but he is really the only goal scorer that Liverpool have. It's interesting to notice that both teams have similar records. Independiente del Valle has better goal statistics, but this is a match of teams that are relatively similar. They are there are differences between the two sides. I would consider IMDb to be the better side, but the differences are not as large as people will think. Matias de los Santos is suspended for Liverpool because of a red card that he received in the previous match. Group G features the third featured match of this week, where Peñarol will host Rosario Central in Montevideo. You have heard all about the back and forth between the two teams, between the two clubs, as to whether Rosario Central fans will be allowed to attend this match. And this all goes back to incidents that happened in the first match day in Argentina. But when we turn to events on the field, Peñarol have been the hotter team. They have won 5 matches in a row over all competitions. Rosario Central won their first match in the league over the weekend. And Agustin Modica is a player to watch. He's 21 years old. There hasn't been a lot of chatter about him going on to Europe, but if he has more performances in the Libertadores as he's had in previous matches, that chatter is going to increase inevitably. Peñarol have had some concern over Leo Sequeira and Maximiliano Silveira, but Diego Aguirre, the manager of Peñarol, has said that everyone will be available. This is going to be an encounter between two teams that are similar. Peñarol have the edge. Any Uruguayan team that is playing Uruguay in a critical match will almost always have the edge. And I think this match is going to be appointment viewing. I think if you're going to set out to watch one match this week in Libertadores, I would watch the encounter between Peñarol and Rosario Central. The other match in the group features Atletico Mineiro against Caracas. Atletico only need a draw against Caracas, who are already eliminated from continental competition, to confirm first place in the group. And as I've said on previous occasions, any point dropped against a Venezuelan team is a bad point to drop. I don't see Atletico Mineiro having any trouble at all against the Venezuelan side. And finally, we turn to Group H, where the places are effectively settled. River Plate hosts Deportiva Táchira of Venezuela in a match in which River can only lose first place if they lose to Táchira and Nacional wins by 4 goals or more. 2 very unlikely scenarios. Táchira will have to deal without the services of Yanel Hernandez, who was sent off in the previous match. And they'll also have to contend with a River Plate team that is just superior to them on all areas of the field. So Nacional will have to travel to Paraguay to play Libertad. Nacional will have to hope for a loss to River and get a big win away. 2 very unlikely events. Nacional are already locked into second place. Libertad are locked into third. They can only lose third if Táchira gain that unlikely result against River. So I expect both teams to play this match out. So the order of play for the group stage matches this week is that on Tuesday, May 28th, we'll see a conclusion to groups D, E, and G. On Wednesday, groups A, B, and C will be played at the same time. And on Thursday, the group stage concludes with the matches in groups F and H. That wraps up the preview of the 6th and final match day of the Copa Libertadores group stage. And a reminder that you can stream every match of the tournament on Fanatiz and Fubo Sports. If you prefer to listen to radio broadcasts in Spanish or Portuguese, many clubs and affiliated radio stations stream their broadcasts live online or on YouTube. So there are plenty of options to experience the Libertadores with your eyes and your ears. If you want to follow me and send a comment or question, my X handle is at Soccermetrics. You can also send questions or comments to at Soccer Down Here or to Jason Longshore at Longshoe. We'll answer your questions about the tournament in a future episode, and we do appreciate your comments as we strive to make this show better. I'll be back late on Thursday to recap the final match day of the Copa Libertadores group stage. This has been the Soccermetrics Copa Libertadores show, a production of Soccermetrics and Soccer Down Here. See you later. Hasta luego. E até mais.